Readers, it took us a minute, but we finally got Superman back. I saw the movie opening weekend and I was incredibly impressed with how great it translated Supes' character onto the big screen. How Gunn was able to introduce new heroes without taking the spotlight away from it being first and foremost a Superman movie, and gave us a plot that came straight out of the Silver Age of DC Comics with a bit of Superman the Animated Series thrown in as a result. Superman 25 was a great way for DC Studios to kick off this newly rebooted DCU, especially since the heads have focused quality over quantity coming out the gate. Is what I would say if 2025 Superman was actually the first installment of the DCU. But it's not. Technically, thanks to Gunn's initial shareholder announcement regarding the Gods and Monsters first chapter of the DCU that we're currently in, his animated show Creature Commandos was the first official installment of the DCU and takes place before the events of Superman 2025. And in Creature Commandos, it confirmed, just like James Gunn said in countless previous interviews, that nearly everything in the Suicide Squad and everything but certain scenes that reference the DCEU Justice League and its members in Season 1 of Peacemaker also happened in the DCU before Superman 25.
If somebody wants to do the DCU cut, you can cut out Aquaman fucking fish.
So technically, we have not one, not two, but 4 installments of the DC New available, all created by James Gunn. And you know, like I do whenever I'm about to start a new cinematic universe venture that's actually genuinely made and not just a cash grab to stay relevant, I decided to give the Suicide Squad and Season 1 of both Peacemaker and Creature Commandos a little rewatch in order to prep for Superman, even though Gunn said you didn't technically have to in order to enjoy and understand the movie. However, I'm glad I did, because in my rewatch of Gunn's previous DC projects, I noticed a lot of plot devices, motifs, and allegories that are common throughout nearly all of his work in the DCU so far, even in Superman 25. So many that after actually sitting down and thinking about it, I think I figured out what the overall ethos is going to consist of in the DCU's first chapter, Gods and Monsters. And what's actually wild about my thesis is that Superman 25 actually confirms it multiple times. Let's begin. Hey readers, Laron here, offering you analysis and perspective on your favorite bits of geek and pop culture media. If it wasn't obvious from the intro, this video will, in fact, contain spoilers for all of the current titles of the DCU, including Superman 25. You can stream all but the latter right now on HBO Max and watch the latter in theaters or on digital until its physical release in September 2025. So give them a watch if you haven't seen them yet and don't want me to spoil pivotal points of them for you in this video. But whether it's your first day or you've been a student of mine for a while, there's ways you can show some love if you like what you saw and you want to move forward. Like joining my Patreon, for example. You can get ad-free early access to all of my videos across every channel starting at $5 a month, including copies of my video scripts, merchandise store discounts, and a whole lot more. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and subscribe to my Substack newsletter. Not only is it the home for all of my written editorials, opinion pieces, and reviews for film and television after they debut on Patreon, but you'll also get an actual heads up whenever I post a new video on both Readus 101 and Readus 201, 5 minutes after their release. That's the syllabus. Now, on to the lesson. Gods and Monsters is metaphorical. And while I get why people would take the title of Chapter 1 of the DCU literally, after all, the superheroes of DC Comics for the longest time have been looked at in the same light as pantheonic deities or even allegories for divinity for the longest time in comparison to Marvel having their superheroes rely on relatability. Everything that we've been exposed to in regards to the installments that are part of the DCU's canon so far points out that the most terrifying forces aren't just the alien creatures, metahumans, or the supernatural anomalies that threaten Earth. The true monsters, once again, so far, are the all-too-human systems and institutions desperate to regain control in a world that is rapidly evolving beyond their reach. Amanda Waller, played brilliantly by Viola Davis, perfectly represents this struggle for control, being a character that exemplifies the ruthless institutional mechanisms of power. She runs Belle Reve Prison. She recruits criminals into Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad. She coerces them into service by promising to reduce their prison sentences, but ensures their obedience with explosive implants, a constant threat of death if they disobey. And, as you can imagine, this makes her a living embodiment of control through fear and manipulation.
You don't know half of what I would do, John.
She also runs Argus, an organization from the New 52 era of DC Comics that serves as DC's version of S.H.I.E.L.D., created by Gene Ha and Jeff. I tried to threaten Ray Fisher's career during the Justice League reshoots in solidarity with Joss Whedon's racism and bigotry, Johns. In said comics, it's a homeland security-focused organization for the US government run by Amanda Waller and Wonder Woman's male love interest Steve Trevor in order to assist the Justice League in protecting the world after Darkseid's first attempt at invading the planet. But so far, as it's been used in the DCU, it's run only by Waller, who uses it to fulfill covert missions that benefit American interests. Because of this change, it's both an intelligence operation and a tool of Imperial enforcement, enabling everything from war crime cover-ups.
Child, your government didn't send you here to protect the world from alien technology. Your government sent you here to cover up their part in it.
To scapegoating.
Did my forger get you the diary?
This goofy shit.
And even resource-driven neocolonialism.
After your decades in the military, General Flagg, I think you'd understand that true friendship is built on petroleum deposits, especially unmined ones in a backward-ass country that's never taken advantage of their natural resources.
Waller's amoral sociopathy operates in tandem with state power, and until the delayed Waller series that was initially intended to precede Peacemaker Season 2 comes out, she remains the architect of Argus's oppressive strategies until Superman 25. Because that's when we see that Rick Flag Sr. is now head of Argus. And while it remains to be seen how he'll steer it in Peacemaker Season 2, we'll find out at the end of August when it's released, Argus under Flag may no longer function as a tool of manipulation. But that doesn't mean the mechanism of control is gone. Just that it's shifted, because now, thanks to Superman 25, the American government proper resumes the role that Waller had when she ran Argus. They're panicked by Superman's independent heroism and are unsure of how to control metahumans or maintain dominance on the world stage, so they turn to Lex Luthor's Planet Watch, a privatized militia, to counteract his influence. And as we learn thanks to Secretary of Defense General Mori being easily persuaded by Lex's reveal of Jor-El and Laura's message to Kal that he and the engineers stole from the Fortress of Solitude, this act is less about protection and more about perception, trying to prove they can still assert authority over powers they no longer understand or possess.
Glad you're not concerned about the metahumans, Rick, because now they're the ones making the rules.
This same obsession with control is echoed in the narratives of the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Creature Commandos, each showcasing different dimensions of imperialism and ideological warfare. Take Starro the Conqueror and the Butterflies, for example. Both factor into James Gunn's fear/fascination he has regarding the death of the sense of self by employing mind control to enact ego death on their hosts. Starro uses face-hugging spores to transform victims into a hive mind extension of himself.
We need to help these people.
Impossible, dear. There are corpses below those stars.
And the butterflies infiltrate human bodies, killing the original consciousness to imitate them and access their memories.
You took over someone.
Yes.
Yeah, you killed someone. Whoever Mern really was.
I needed to stop them.
And while these tactics reflect a weaponized ideology where individual identity is erased in favor of a singular imperial will, some of these villains are themselves product of imperial abuse. Starro, before attacking the city of Valdemar on Corto Maltese, was a victim of colonial subjugation. He was captured, tortured, and experimented on for 30 years by the American government and Gaius Greaves, aka the Thinker.
You brought us visitors, have you, Greaves? Have you come to save me from that madman? 30 years he's kept me here, tortured me. Had his way with me.
And while it took hundreds of lives in the process, his retribution-fueled rage upon his escape from Jotunheim was rooted in trauma and represents a cycle of violence perpetuated by American imperialism.
This city is mine.
Similarly, the butterflies believe they can fix humanity's self-destructive tendencies by assuming control of powerful individuals, a mindset disturbingly similar to colonial powers like Britain and Japan back in the day, who justified their dominion over quote-unquote underdeveloped nations as benevolent intervention.
We made a vow to make the choices for you that you were incapable of making on your own, to save your people and your world no matter how many lives it cost us.
And then there's the Baravia-Jarhanpur conflict in Superman 25, also presenting a form of ideological control masquerading as liberation. While Baravia doesn't engage in mind control or the death of the sense of self, they pursue genocide under the pretense of said liberation.
But the Baravian government maintains they're freeing the Jarhanpurians from a tyrannical regime.
Yes, but you know that's very silly.
In reality, it's all about territorial control and resource acquisition, and their actions go unchecked because of their alliance with the US. That doesn't sound familiar at all, does it? Specifically Lex Luthor, who benefits politically and economically as a concession prize for accomplishing his main goal, killing Superman.
Oh my God.
Right? Yeah. Been thinking of opening one in my half of Jarhanpur.
All while Superman, speaking of which, interferes with the conflict not at the behest of the government, but out of moral obligation. And the result of acting on said obligation only exposed the hollow justifications of said imperial quote-unquote peacekeeping.
People were going to die!
This is also reflective of how little value is placed on life within the US's own operations via Waller and how she ran Argus. Flag Jr.'s Team 1, without his knowledge or anyone else's on the team, is deployed as cannon fodder, a distraction meant to die, and most of them are slaughtered upon interacting with the newly established military dictatorship of Corto Maltese when they first arrived. Bloodsport's Team 2, though more successful, is still under the threat of execution via Waller's kill switches if they go off mission. Peacemaker, who kills Flag to protect Waller's cover-up of Project Starfish, becomes a pawn once again, forced into further service after recovering from Bloodsport's throat bullet, just for Waller to plan on blaming him for the butterfly-related deaths over the course of it. And Task Force M, the creature commandos, being non-human, are even more expendable, treated as assets without agency, whose deaths warrant no remorse despite most of them having distinct personalities and mentalities that have been amplified by their absolutely tragic backstories that make them as human as anyone else. But try telling that to Amanda Waller.
Technically, Congress said Argus can't use incarcerated human beings as mission operatives any longer. But what about beings that aren't human?
So yeah, as far as what's been revealed about DCU's Chapter 1 so far, the tension across Gunn's gods and monsters is less about man versus monster and more about power versus autonomy. It isn't saying that the monsters or aliens aren't the embodiment of horror, but that the true horror lies in the regular human systems, governments, intelligence agencies, private militias, and bureaucrats like Amanda Waller that perpetuate control at all costs. The gag, however, is that when organizations like these, as they're depicted in the DCU so far, play into trying to hold on to said power, they will always inevitably lose it. And they will always lose it because the arch nemesis of control, to this extent, is anarchy. And anarchy is always literal. What do I mean by anarchy at this point? Well, considering how mostly all of the protagonists and morally good aligned characters they interact with have been characterized so far in the DCU, anarchy means refusing to recognize authority or other controlling systems, and being able to live based on mutual and voluntary cooperation with each other, instead of said systems directing our every move. And it's like I said previously, while making the decision to fight against Starro and the Butterflies in order to achieve said anarchy perfectly reflects the allegory in the DCU so far, it's also how said characters reject the authority of the society they currently live in that implement real-world similarities to the creatures that actually rob people of said autonomy. They choose personal ethics over patriotism, truth over loyalty, and humanity over obedience, which just so happens to be one of the foundational building blocks of this installment of the DCU so far. Rick Flag Jr.'s arc in the Suicide Squad is kinda how this shift started. Initially unaware that his Team 1 was merely a sacrificial lamb to allow Bloodsport's Team 2 to infiltrate Corto Maltese unnoticed, Flag forms an alliance with Sol Solia, the leader of the anti-regime resistance. And after saving his life and agreeing to work with him in Team 2 of Task Force X, we get a good image of what Rick's core values are as they advance in Project Starfish. Specifically in how much his loyalty to justice, not military power or political convenience, proves to be after learning her plight.
Luna and Suarez murdered my entire family. I'd make a deal with the devil to stop them.
This causes him to understand how this one last coup will finally free this South American nation from the fascism and totalitarianism that has run it since forever ago.
There's gonna be a lot of soldiers watching Jotunheim. That'll leave the palace vulnerable. Luna and the other generals will be left without protection.
So when he discovers America's role in turning Starro into a WMD via Project Starfish, he has a profound awakening of moral injury, radicalization through disillusionment, and enough cognitive dissonance for him to rebel against Waller and America's interests. Now that he's pieced together Waller's hand in his team's slaughter and realized that even children were subject to the experiments Greaves conducted on Starro and his extensional spores, he's forever changed, not just physically, but ideologically as well.
I joined the military to serve my country, not to be its puppet.
Unfortunately, as we know, Flag's attempt is cut short by Peacemaker. He kills Flag under orders from Waller.
Peacemaker. What a joke.
And tries to kill Ratcatcher 2 as well before being tapped with one of Bloodsport's bullets. And while Bloodsport isn't surprised to hear about America's involvement in Project Starfish once she tells him about everything she witnessed in that bunker that's about to break free, Bloodsport's own personal arc regarding whether or not he believes all the good has been wrung out of him like a soaked dishcloth that started with Waller threatening to put his daughter in Belle Reve unprotected if he didn't take this mission, comes full circle when he and the rest of the squad makes the choice to disobey Waller's final orders, stop Starro, and reclaim their autonomy. With the help of a black woman who said fuck imperialism, of course.
Get on the satellite dial, you fucking dickhead!
Yes, ma'am.
So while Bloodsport leading the rest of Task Force X against Waller's wishes to stop Starro from killing thousands of innocents is a rare symbolic victory against the machinery of control, Peacemaker's story continues this arc of radical transformation. His infamous mantra, peace at any cost, originates from deep childhood trauma imposed on him by his white supremacist father, the supervillain the White Dragon, who raised him to kill without remorse. Yet even in the Suicide Squad, when he clings to this belief in order to rationalize killing Flag, he still can't help but feel conflicted about what his coping mechanism to justify his indoctrination is making him do.
Please, don't make me do this.
Then in Peacemaker Season 1, the cracks start to show. He hesitates, he questions, and most importantly, he begins to connect with Emilia Harcourt, John Economos, Leoto Adebayo, and yes, even the incredibly sociopathic superhero fanboy, Vigilante. This group that will become the 11th Street Kids became his found family, something that he truly never had before. So when the Butterflies beg him to let their cow survive in the name of planetary salvation, appealing to his old mantra,
Please, fulfill your calling. Be the peacemaker. Join us in saving your planet.
Christopher Smith, aka Peacemaker, refuses. Not out of hatred, but because he finally sees value in free will. And in that decision, he allows connection, not ideology, to determine who he is.
Why did you choose not to help them?
Because I knew that'd hurt you and the others if I did.
And speaking of my good sis Leota, she also embodies this rejection of inherited power. She initially took this job from her mom, Amanda Waller, because she needed to support her family after the dog shelter she ran in Gotham City lost funding. That's why she was part of the initial group. She needed to plant a forged diary in Peacemaker's trailer on Waller's orders at her request. She also didn't think that highly about Peacemaker, especially considering his familial history.
Yeah, he's his own thing. Sexist.
Yeah.
Probably racist.
Oh, you know who his father is.
Oh, yeah.
But over the course of Project Butterfly, she watches Peacemaker evolve and get better thanks to him experiencing said family that he needed but never had. Which made her feel all the more guilty for having to plant the diary, especially after learning what the Mern that was killed when the rogue Butterfly entered him was capable of.
Even he could have changed. I know that. I took that from him.
And when she digested that, her turning point became when Peacemaker, once a living embodiment of proto-fascist libertarianism, displayed that change in real time. Even after everything she did to ruin his life even more by planting that diary, she saw him willingly display the change in the form of openly rejecting the shield logic of peace at any cost that he hid behind his entire life. He chose his friend's autonomy over ideological domination, and that inspired her to out her own mother on national television, expose Task Force X, Belle Reve, and the systemic abuse Waller has enabled since the Suicide Squad. And she doesn't do it out of vengeance. She does it to ensure transparency and justice, signaling a profound departure from the legacy she was born into.
Where are you going?
To do the right thing.
And then when it comes to Superman, his love for Earth and humanity trumps any political government. Period, Pooh. And even his views reflect that.
First of all, whether or not Jarhanpur is an imperfect country does not give another nation the right to invade it.
Because as Superman 25 has shown with Clark's upbringing, it's not about the nation, it's about the people. The reason why he refuses to let global politics dictate morality is because his love for Earth is bound to his unshakable belief in human goodness, instead of it being tethered to American bureaucracy. There is a reason why he changed his slogan to Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow, after all. And as Lois learned after helping Mr. Terrific rescue him, Crypto, Metamorpho, and his son from Lex's Pocket Dimension prison, that naive sense of mind might be the proof she needed to convince her that this alien immigrant simply wants to be part of humanity.
But that is being human. And that's my greatest strength.
So, refusing to recognize authority or other controlling systems. Check. Being able to live based on mutual and voluntary cooperation with each other instead of said systems directing your every move. Check. It just so happens that all of the authority and controlling systems outside of Starro and the Butterflies are the likes of the US government and parental figures. And while I both acknowledge and respect the found families that the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker made, if you can't see how Superman is the living embodiment of wanting to live on mutual and voluntary cooperation, then I don't know what to tell you, boo-boo. Anarchy pretty much drives the DCU at this point, mostly because all the projects so far have been written by Gunn, and considering the era of comics he's pulling from, as well as the ones he read growing up in the early 70s, there's one form of anarchy that was getting pretty popular that he was exposed to that's more than likely responsible for why it's in all of his work in DC's sandbox so far. One that, because of its history in anarchy, loves to make it loud and proud, but in a way that fucks over both the establishment and capitalism, because punk is pretty loud. Honestly, learning that punk is the ethos of the DCU so far shouldn't really surprise you. James Gunn was born in the mid-60s and spent the majority of his childhood and first few teenage years in the 70s when both the music and the ideology became mainstream. Ideologies like being anti-corporation, anti-corporatism, anti-capitalism, anti-establishment, and especially anti-authoritarianism are pretty much the 10 commandments of the rock subgenre, which is why there's no such thing as conservative punk. It's not up for discussion, I'm sorry. It's individualism, but not the type of objectivist individual Ayn Rand won't shut up about. It's authentic, unapologetic self-expression and the refusal to be molded by respectability politics. It's the belief that one's right to live freely and express themselves is 100% worth defending, even if it means directly confronting entrenched power. That spirit is planted in every corner of Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters, across the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and especially Superman 25. We see a recurring tension, systems built on control versus individuals reclaiming their autonomy, as well as the rebellion they inspire. Waller uses Task Force X as a force of control, sending Flag Jr. and his team off to die. He's given the chance to listen to the people who've been wounded by war after they saved his life, and figures out how he can make himself and the rest of the surviving squad members useful in their attempt to cut out the cancer of Corto Maltese. That allegiance with Sol Soria and his willingness to immediately blow the whistle on Project Starfish after hearing the extent of America's involvement marks a clear break from blind obedience to institutional authority. And it's in his moral injury and disillusionment that inspired the surviving members of the squad to defy Waller's orders and stop Starro, reclaiming their agency in the process. And that goes triple for Bloodsport in regards to overcoming what his father did to him to make him believe there's no good left in him, while at the same time leveraging the power he has over Waller and having the information on Project Starfish in order to protect the vulnerable. In this case, the lives and freedom of himself, his daughter, and every surviving member of Task Force X responsible for Starro's defeat. 100% pure punk.
I told you I'd make you a leader, Dubois.
You got a deal.
Same with the Butterflies of Peacemaker Season 1 and Chris choosing humanity's right to make their own choices and be their own individual selves instead of having their sense of self killed by creatures that believe things will be better for everyone if they were in charge. He only got that far because he was able to steadily unlearn that conditioning he gave himself in order to justify his quote-unquote peace at any cost mantra, thanks to the bonds he developed with the 11 Street Kids, Leota, Emilia, and John. This realization plus making the choice to end the threat of the Butterflies in favor of upholding humanity's right to self-determination is a direct rejection of the authoritarian logic he once embodied. Even Leota had to unlearn that people making the moral decision to willingly change for the better is just wishful thinking in her dealings with Peacemaker, and made the decision to expose corrupt authority despite the personal risk one might take because of who their parents are, because she realizes that level of transparency and truth is incredibly important. Even Creature Commandos shows it. The bride-killing Princess Alana was not out of blind obedience to orders, but personal loss. Alana's misinformation strategy against Cersei and Amanda Waller led to the death of Nina, the person who helped her rediscover joy. This isn't the boomer caricature of punk rebellion as selfish chaos. It's rebellion anchored in love, grief, and a refusal to be manipulated again.
I'm killing you because you took the life of the only friend I have, and the only one of us with an ounce of kindness in her veins.
And then, of course, there's Superman 25, the film where we learn that the American government has been having issues trying to keep metahumans under control since they started popping up 51 years before the foundation of the United States. And specifically has a problem with Superman because he answers to no government, refuses to be an instrument of imperial policy, and inspires others like Maxwell Lord's Justice Gang to break from corporate control and act on their own moral compasses.
Sorry, kid. Superman couldn't make it. So you got an upgrade.
This is something that Lex Luthor definitely exploited about him because he's a piece of shit, but Superman, especially this Superman, who meets and exceeds Punk's daily minimum anti-authoritarianism quota, is loyal to humanity, not bureaucracy. And, as of now, it's one of the best films that has ever successfully illustrated that point about the character because of it. Across all of these stories, Gunn actively chose to reject the type of heroism that operates within sanctioned limits in favor of embracing the punk conviction that goodness often means defying authority. We see the fear of losing your autonomy one way while showing it can be reclaimed in another. We see what happens when you form a found family with bonds strong enough to help unlearn some pretty messed up shit that you use to shield yourself from blood familial trauma. Outing authority because it's the right thing to do regardless of your part in it or if it will get someone close to you in trouble.
What the fuck?
All of this is punk. And it's punk that shows being anti-authoritarian not as nihilistic, but as an active force for good. The rebellions formed from these acts of moral courage aren't sparked by destruction, as a lot of whitewashed libertarians like to preach because they care more about property damage than civil rights, but by hope. And as we've seen in the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and Superman 25, they inspire others to act in kind. And that, refusing to bow, daring to care, and igniting others to rise with you, is about as punk as it gets.
Maybe that's the real punk rock.
No, readers, that line wasn't just said to make Supes look naively idealistic. He doesn't need help to achieve that. Well, at least not anymore. That's actually been the mantra of Gods and Monsters, the first chapter of the DCU, since before the DCU officially launched with the release of Creature Commandos. The Suicide Squad gave us the proper emotional setup by using the loss of autonomy by both otherworldly creatures and our own governments. Then, Peacemaker Season 1 further explored said emotional setup in order to show the importance of challenging the norms in both ourselves and in society. Creature Commando Season 1 sparks dialogue and discourse in a time where empathy among the religious is being looked at as a sin to keep their bigotry justified, and people truly believe that just blatantly killing Nazis is bad and lazy writing, which, might I add, is exactly what a Nazi would say. And then one of the main points in Superman 25, when you look past Lex's Saltburn-ass plan to kill him, is that genocide is bad and that it shouldn't be illegal for you to be able to do something about it if you have the power. It's literally a 2-hour, 11-minute long mobilization for people to be better during a time when the establishment doesn't benefit from you doing so. Also, we got so many pet adoptions off Crypto being in this movie. That warmed my heart so much hearing that news bit. It's just like I said previously, readers. James Gunn, being a Gen Xer who grew up in the 70s and 80s, made him the perfect age to truly understand what the ideology is about as he got older. It's because of this, even with his work in Marvel Studios, he finds the value in things like being your own individual, found family, doing things yourself, not complying to systems of control, whether governmental or extraterrestrial, mocking those whose idea of a perfect society is about compliance, perfection, and superiority, and other ideologies that fit Punk's place in the Anarchy family, and we definitely see it reflected in his superhero work. And it's because the ethos of Punk fits so well with the stories that have been told in the DCU so far, it's a great and fresh reminder to everyone who grew up reading superhero comic books that they were created to initially be the protectors of the oppressed and the downtrodden, especially Superman. And that there's no dividing superheroes from politics because of it. Shit, I mean, even Marvel Studios had the Sokovia Accords. But you didn't complain about them. I wonder why. Anyways, readers, your homework assignment for the day. Even if you haven't seen Superman yet, write in the comment section below what you think the overall theme of the Gods and Monsters chapters of the DCU is, if you think it's something different. Or if you feel like sharing with the rest of the class, which DC hero you think would be perfect to introduce during the DCU's Punk phase. My personal choice? Green Arrow. And yes, the reason is exactly what you think it is. Whichever question you decide to answer, I'd love to know your thoughts. A huge shout out to my patrons, both big and small, for helping make this channel possible. Make sure you check out the card at the end of the video to join, or click the link to it or any of my affiliates in the description box below. But until then, this is Readus 101. Class dismissed.